Do you ever feel like you're the only one struggling to get ranking on your Google business profile? You never seem to be found on Google Maps? Well, last week a client said to me that they've been ranking for 2 years at number 1 and now they've just disappeared. And that led me down a rabbit hole because I thought, what happens if I look at all the comments on my community, I take all of the negotiations and emails I've had with my clients over the years and all their questions and their problems, and I then put all that into ChatGPT to see, is there something missing? Is there a common problem that everyone seems to share when it comes to your Google business profile? And actually what it came out with was quite surprising, and I'm going to share it with you today. So we're going to look at 3 things. Number 1, 3 hidden truths about successful businesses that no one tends to admit. Number 2, why ranking number 1 isn't always as great as it sounds. And number 3, why you need to just be a bit fairer on yourself. Just cut some slack because it's actually quite tough. And I think what we look at today is going to be really helpful because I've not heard anyone talk about these things. But first up, why is Google so important to your business? Well, in the past, people would go to Google or to search engines in general. They would do a search and then really you'd be competing against the rest of the world to see who comes up top in that organic result. But of course, things have changed. In recent years, Google's been focusing more on mobiles and it's been focusing on more local types of services and businesses. So you can now appear number 1 to local people, to your business, much easier. And so that's why there's this map pack, or the results now, rather than showing organic searches, shows a map with 3 businesses on. And if you can get in those top 3 businesses, then there's a lot of traffic for you to be found. And so you could say this is a big chance at the moment. And they even give you a free business profile for you to fill out. So all you need to do is put the information in and then hopefully come in the top 3. But it's never quite as simple as that because others have recognized its value and they've learned how to optimize their business. So is there anything you can do to get ahead of them? Well, of course, everyone wants first place. And this is truth number 1, is everyone thinks they deserve to be first. And so what I noticed when I went through these various ideas, these emails through ChatGPT, is what came back out was that the failing for most business owners is mindset. They're unrealistic about what they can achieve. And so I came up again and again with the same problems, that first of all, they didn't focus on what was right. Secondly, they had blind spots. And thirdly, they just had no strategy whatsoever. You see, saying I'm the best isn't going to be good enough for Google. You might be the best, but Google may not agree because it's not got proof to support that. If you can get your customers saying you're the best, you've got a much better chance. But how can you do that? And if your customers are saying you're the best for your type of service or business, Google will start to see signs in how your customers are given the right signals to say that. So for example, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you really were the best, then your reviews would reflect that. People would be putting in 5-star reviews, but they would use words that were common and normal, not just spammy words. And they would do it in a natural way when it's described. And they would naturally post photos and pictures of your products and your services. The fact is you can't fake natural 5-star reviews. Google knows that. Google knows you can't fake videos. Google knows you can't fake links to websites. Over time, of course, there are people that do fake these things, but over time, you set a pattern of consistency. Because if you are the very best, Google starts to work this out through various signals. But it's not just that. Also, when Google sends traffic your way, it will then see how people interact with your business. Do they come right back to the search results, which is known as bounce rates? Do they go back to other competitors and then stay there, showing to Google that actually maybe they're the best, not you? The fact is how you interact and the experience your customers get gives clues to Google as to whether you really are the best. So ultimately, if you're stronger than your competitors, you start to rise up the rankings. If you're weaker and the signals are poorer, you'll start to either stall or come down the rankings. So if you're putting off working on a strategy for ranking in Google Business Profiles and Google Maps, well, now's the time to do something about it. Because if you don't, your competitors are. And of course, no one inherits the number one spot, it's earned. And so this brings us on to truth number 2, which is being number one doesn't really mean anything at all. Now, I've had lots of people that have said to me in the past that they were number one and they're no longer number one. But you know what? Even if they're not number one and they're not top in what they consider is an important keyword, it may not be the end of the world. In fact, if those number one metrics were just vanity metrics, in other words, it was great to say you're number one for a certain keyword term, so what? If the people that search those keywords aren't actually buying from you, if they're not producing sales and leads, then actually it is just vanity. So surely it makes more sense to be number one or near the top of keywords that your customers are really searching. So when was the last time you actually understood what your real customers that are buying are searching? Well, there's quite a few ways you can check that out. But the fact you need to just know what your customers are searching before they buy is one of the key things here. So questions to ask yourself. Did the top spot bring actual leads or just clicks? Were you even ranking for the right keywords when you were number one? And did users enjoy the experience when they did click through and came across your profile or visited your website? If you ask those questions, you very clearly start to see a pattern that's probably being number one didn't produce the results you expected. And remember, algorithms change. So even if you were number one a few years ago, it's a very different algorithm. There are over 200 factors Google uses to try and help decide who should be number one. And they've introduced lots of factors in the last few years. So maybe even if you didn't do anything, you find you'll be falling because you're not keeping up with the latest changes in business profiles. But that brings us on to truth number 3. As a business owner, have you ever considered what would happen if you were number one and you did get a flood of traffic coming through? Then what? Well, that gives you really a bit of a crossroads, a bit of a choice. I've known this happen before, where it happened to a business where he had so many leads coming in, it actually meant then that he neglected his profile because he didn't have time to do any online advertising or marketing. He didn't need to. He had loads and loads of interest coming in for his business. And he was so busy running his business that he had to neglect those things. But months go by, and of course, suddenly, now the leads dry up because he's not been optimizing his business. And so you then get this situation where you've got two choices. Do you, choice number one, hire more people to cope with the demand? But the problem with that is sometimes businesses will fluctuate. You get what's known as a seasonal trend, and it could just be that suddenly you hit a dip and then you've got to let people go. And that can be a real tough challenge for a business owner. Or do you go for choice number 2, where you just decide to just carry on as you are, trying to cope with all the extra leads, but of course something has to give, and it's normally your optimization, your Google Business Profile that gets forgotten. And then over time, you wonder why you're not ranking. And then by the time you do notice that you've not been ranking for a while and you've kind of run out of business, suddenly you're then panicking. Where do I get my business from? Why am I no longer number one? And that was a common thread with a lot of the comments I received in emails in the past year or so. And so it brings me really to what's the real lesson then to learn from all this information that I've gathered in the past week or two making this video. And what it comes down to is this: running a business is tough. And optimizing a business profile for your business is tough as well. And doing the two together is even tougher. But if you're serious about running a business that gets successful leads coming in constantly so that you can handle them, then you need to do 3 things. 1, understand how search engines really work. Number 2, build the mindset for long-term visibility and sustainability and rankings. And number 3, stick to a system that can support sustained growth. And that's what's going to bring in a constant flow of leads that you can handle. And that's pretty much how you win using Google Business Profile. It doesn't cost any money, no ads, it's free traffic. But here's the other thing: your business website can also impact your rankings on Google Maps. Now, if you want to know more about that and 5 things you can do to make sure that the visitors become leads and sales, then you need to head over to this video next because I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do. I'll see you there.